Okay, we're going to give a minute for attendees to join this session. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to Tech Day 2020. The title of this session is Accessible Content Creation, the Why and the How. I want to begin by mentioning that this session is being recorded. The session is sponsored by Xerox. Xerox offers digital printing tools and technology used in more than 160 countries. To learn more about Xerox, visit xerox.com. At the end of this session, please fill out the prompted survey to be placed in an opportunity drawing to win a power bank donated by Xerox. During the session, please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. We will answer as many as we can after the presentation. I would now like to introduce our speakers from Cal State Fullerton's Division of Information Technology, Jonni Taylor, our web programmer, and Marc Montaser, our ATI coordinator. Welcome, Jonni and Marc.
Thank you for the introduction, Denise. Here, let me go just share my screen real quick. There you go. And welcome to our webinar about accessible content creation. Let me start off. First of all, I want to give you guys a definition of what accessibility is. So within probably the past few months, it became more and more apparent how important accessibility is, because everybody became a digital content creator all of a sudden, because most knowledge transfer is now being done mostly digital. And there's still other ways of us communicating with each other, but especially in the university kind of sphere, there's a lot of material being handed over digitally. So accessibility is the design of products, devices, services, or environments as to be usable by everyone regardless of disability. All right, next slide is for Jonni.
So when we talk about the need for accessibility, I don't think people often realize how many people require that accessibility. 20% of the US population has at least one disability. 11% of college students report a disability, and nearly 1 in 5 people have a disability in the United States.
All right. And here, these are some questions for self-reflection. Ask yourself, are you one in those 5 people with a disability? Do you know someone, or are you one of the 5 with the disabilities? And when creating digital content, are you doing what is best for the audience or / for the students, or are you doing it what is most convenient to do for you to create digital content? Because they kind of, they kind of clash heads a little bit, because the ability that you have, someone else might not have. And that's one of the things that when it comes to accessibility, that question needs to be brought up over and over again. And that's one of the reasons why we basically work in this field. Obviously there's like a legal requirement, but it's also about, doing the best for not only yourself, but doing the right thing, All right, let's move on. There are different kinds of disability. I'm going to let Jonni talk about this.
Well, as you can see in this chart, there are the disabilities that you may think about when you're creating digital content. Does someone have a visual disability? Are they blind? Are they colorblind? Are they deaf? Which is why we do things like, make sure that our videos are closed captioned. Does someone have a physical disability or cognitive? But I think there are some disabilities people don't think about. And what about temporary disabilities? Have you ever broken your dominant arm or hand? It's it's hard to get around when you can't use the hand that you primarily use for everything. Opening doors, just getting through daily life, putting on your shoes. And then there's situational impairments. And I know that cute little picture in there with the man holding the baby. And I'm sure many of you may be parents, have had siblings, or you have to hold on to a little kid and you're trying to do things. You're trying to access your email. You're trying to make yourself lunch. But a situational impairment that I want you to think about that often is not talked about is, what about a class impairment or a financial impairment? What if someone lives in an area where they do not have access to good high-speed internet? What if they have to use public sources like libraries? Or when COVID first happened and everything shut down, I saw someone sitting in their car on their laptop outside of a Starbucks using their Wi-Fi. So some people may have limited data and the only way they can access digital content is on their phone. So when you create content and you use large files, or they have to download videos, then that eats up that data and it makes it hard for them to access your content. Next slide, Mark. So how is accessibility provided? How do people with different disabilities access your content? The most common one we think about is vision, low vision, blind, colorblind. And oftentimes the technologies that are available are things like screen readers, braille display, high contrast colors, and magnifiers. I hate to admit it, I use magnifying feature quite often. Hearing impairments, if they're deaf, hard of hearing, or what if you're in a noisy environment? Have you ever tried to watch a video while riding the metro? It's not easy. So in those cases, we have sign language, captions and subtitles, and transcripts. There's mobility issues like MS, cerebral palsy, arthritis, other injuries. So they could use keyboard or other assistive technologies to navigate digital content using speech. There's cognitive disabilities, dyslexia, ADHD, PTSD, or those who are just not cognitive, that are just not neurotypical. So how you organize your information and how you lay your content out is super important. You don't want things to start auto-playing. You don't want sounds to jar someone. You don't want flashy GIFs. I know we all remember the GIFs from the 90s, and there's people that still love them, but they're not good to use. And finally, there's just learning accessibility, how different learning styles and preferences. Some people are better at visual learners. I like written instructions. And what about people who where English is not their first language? So making things accessible, how you lay out your content, and how you provide your digital media impacts people across so many different domains.
All right. So let's talk about what Cal State Fullerton is doing for accessibility. So Cal State Fullerton, obviously one of the many CSUs, or 23 CSUs in our state, we all have the same initiative on every campus, and that's the Accessible Technology Initiative. And in that initiative, we basically broke up the huge task of accessibility across the board in three main sectors. Okay, one of them is web. We make sure the websites are all coded the right way, that they lay out information in a nice way so they don't necessarily clutter the mind of someone who tries to find something. Then we have procurement, and procurement is making sure that we purchase items that are accessible, and we still go by what fits best our needs for the university, but at the same time, we do ask vendors to basically submit an accessibility conformance report to us to show us what they have been doing for accessibility, and if possible, like a roadmap, where are they taking their product when it comes to accessibility. And obviously, we will prefer more the vendors that are willing to work with us on accessibilities. That's basically the way we're trying to go with the purchasing power that the CSUs have. And then also instruction materials. We're trying to look at, okay, we have a lot of people creating content for instruction material. Now we need to see, okay, um, are we bringing out enough guides for people to create instruction material that is accessible? And that brings us to the next point. All of this would not be able to work or basically be put into practice if we don't have enough training and awareness building across not only our campus, but across all the 23 campuses. So, but yeah, Cal State Fullerton, we've been working hard on order to basically push the awareness, and we're offering plenty of training for whoever wants to be involved and getting more accessible material out there. Okay, so here we have some available tools that are basically already available on our campus. We have Blackboard Ally for our campus LMS. LMS is for Learning Management System. That's basically where our students and faculty go to upload or download homework assignments, or they can even get their tests or quizzes there. Then we also have an accessibility checker built into our new campus LMS, which is Canvas. And then we have GrackleDoc, which is for Google Workspace. It's basically an extension for Google Workspace where people can upload their document. Specifically, if you're trying to make a PDF accessible, GrackleDocs is basically the tool you should be using because it makes it easier. I'm not saying it's a perfect solution because making a PDF accessible is pretty hard, but GrackleDoc eases the load significantly. And then we have accessibility checkers in Microsoft, Excel, PowerPoint, and accessibility checker in PDF, Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat. All right, let me do.
And I would like to add in for those tools, besides those things, Mark and I both do provide one-on-one training on campus for, he does instructional materials, I do web. We also have Raven who trains, who's a part of the web team. And we are also currently working on accessibility ribbons that you can install on Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So if you stick to that ribbon when you're creating your document, it will help you keep everything in order and make sure that what you're inputting is accessible.
Resources.
So yeah, so finally some resources that that I have kind of curated. Our first one there is our ATI website at Cal State Fullerton. It tells you everything from the federal and state and local laws and the CSU rules that we follow. It gives you information on all the other things that Mark talked about as far as web procurement and instructional material accessibility. The next link there is the WCAG Easy Checklist. This checklist, while it is primarily for web, can also be used when you're creating documents because a lot of the rules apply across the board. Headers, links, images, image alt tags, all of that is the same, whether it's on the web or a document. So that checklist is gives you a really super easy thing to follow. It's a good kind of guideline. And if nothing else, it just gives you some good information. Penn State accessibility. I hate to kind of call out another university here, but they have an excellent site. It is very resource heavy. There's lots of information. It can be easy to kind of fall in the rabbit hole there, but they have some fantastic resources and information. And then the last one there is a color contrast checker. This is to make sure that your color contrast is high enough so those with low vision and even some of, I get, emails come in all the time and there's, orange text on a white background and I can barely read it. So, you want to make sure that your colors meet at least WCAG AA standards. So I provided that link there. It's a great tool if you're making images, graphics, PDFs, anything like that. You want to make sure your colors are good.
Yeah, and even if you want to basically just find a starting point within all these resources, because I know there's a lot of information coming at you, but we only got half an hour. So even with like trying to basically, you want to like make a first step, like you want to buy something accessible or you want to create an accessible document, feel free to reach out to either one of us and we'll show you where to basically set your first foot and then just take you to the journey of becoming more and more accessible. Okay, so we're basically coming to the end of our presentation, but here's something smart to remember us by. This is a quote by Sarah Hendren. She is not only an advocate, but she works in accessibility, but she also does a lot of engineering and art. So and I think it's very true, because when it comes to accessibility, I always say, you know, you're at some point you're also doing a lot of accessibility work for yourself. So basically the quote says, all people over the course of their lives traffic between times of relative independence and dependence. So sooner or later, I know the cold hand of, or the cold touch of age will reach me too, and my eyesight might not be that well, or my hearing might not be that well. And that's why I'm trying to prep everything that, you know, if I lose one of these abilities over time, or, you know, whatever life brings, that I will still be able to work with people, to have conversations with them online, digitally, in whatever shape or form. And that's why, you know, it's basically a personal mission to get there and get everybody involved in accessibility and make sure that everybody stays accessible. I know if people have questions or remarks, please put them in the Q&A. We're here to answer.
We don't have any questions so far.
No questions? So, okay, I'll give you guys some time. I know typing sometimes takes a while. Oh yeah, I see one question. Can you explain the Grackle doc in a little bit more detail? So we do use some of the Google apps still. And if you go into the Google apps to basically use or upload a PDF, you will see under the tools or extensions part, Grackle Docs. And when you click on that, this is only for people who are on campus or working on campus. When you click on that, it basically gives you a step-by-step, like a wizard, to make your document more accessible if it's not. And that is extremely helpful. When it comes to optical character recognition, I think the Blackboard Ally does a lot better job, but Grackle Docs is, I think, better in the step-by-step guidance on how to get your document more accessible. Next question, I see.
We have a question now from Lina Nguyen. How effective has CSUF been in helping those with disabilities compared to other schools?
Well, there is no real, how do you call it? Like,
there's no metric to compare. I believe we have the our disability support services is a really robust program. I've worked at other campuses, and they have we do a really good job of making sure that students are provided, for example, if they need materials in Braille, or if they need a note taker, or if they need accommodative seats, DSS takes care of all of that. So as far as what Mark and I do, we primarily make sure that what can be accessible, that we put out there digitally, that it is accessible. So unfortunately, I don't have much of an answer to that question beyond that.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not. Yeah, go ahead.
The same response, Jonni and Mark, thanks for that response. There has not been any standard metrics that measures the ATI effort by different campuses. But more importantly, you know, ATI is touching a lot of students, and it is extremely important to address these issues for the benefit of the students, so that we don't leave anybody, you know, anyone with inaccessible material or teaching style. So it is a worthy effort to address, you know, the accessibility issue. We don't do it because we want to compare ourselves to another school and say we do better than the other school. We want to say we do take care of our students when it comes to disability issues.
We have another question from Patty O. It says, I want to make sure all my web pages and documents are VI accessible. Should I use JAWS to go through it, or just use Wave evaluation tool?
I would recommend both. Wave is a good starting point, but actually hearing how your reader reads your website to you is super helpful, because not only does it give you an idea of how someone with vision disability navigates your site, but also those using adaptive softwares, for example, keyboard or tab or voice commands, their software will also scroll, jump from section to section of your website in the same way that JAWS reader will. For those of you who do not have access to JAWS, you can download a tool called, I should have put this in my resources, NVDA. It is a free tool to download, and it is a screen reader, and it is a really great free tool. So if you're interested in how your web content or your documents are read and you can't afford or don't have access to JAWS, that is also accessible or available to you.
JAWS also involves like a learning curve. So if you don't use it on a regular basis, chances are you might be a little frustrated testing out your site with that. So I definitely I do recommend the Wave tool. It's very good, but also Google Chrome has an accessibility checker built in. So you want to also take advantage of that. And yeah, NVDA, like what Jonni said.
There's that. I guess those are all the questions so far. There is a link from Sepher. So Sepher is saying that JAWS is available to campus users under Freedom Scientific. One more question came up. What are the biggest accessibility challenges faced after instruction went virtual?
I want to say the sheer amount, because like there's a lot of things you need to go through. There, since the pandemic, basically everybody has created digital content now, and there's just a lot of material out there, and you have to kind of prioritize what you want to work on first. And priority is sometimes set if someone reaches out to you and just says, hey, I have trouble accessing this, can you help me? And that's where we basically start off first.
On the website of it, it has been kind of fun to have everyone come into me saying, oh my God, my stuff needs to be accessible. And I'm like, well, it's needed to be accessible. But I think it is because of the pandemic, I think things have been put into focus for a lot of people, realizing how many people are actually being excluded. But I agree with Marc. Really, it's how much content is out there that has existed and how much new content is going out. So it's a constant race to go back and fix the things that are already there and make sure that the things going up are accessible as they go up.
Yeah, to add to that, Jonni, when we're on campus, disabled student support services was available to students. So in case if they have inaccessible material, they can approach the DSS services and be able to get accessible material, alternative material for that. But now being virtual means, it's very, very important. Every content we put out there, need to be accessible by default, because, we don't know under what circumstances students will be accessing these materials. So, it's highly important to make the effort to make sure that all content we put out there in the learning management system or on the website or other shared documents are accessible all the time.
Very true.
So do I stop my share real quick?
You can.
Okay. So any more questions?
So yeah, thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you learned something. And Marc and I are here if for those of you that are on campus that need help. We're happy to help.
Yes, I hope you guys know we're we hope we're pretty easy people to talk to. So please do not hesitate, reach out to us and we'll help you out.
All right, if there are no additional questions, this will conclude our session. Thank you everyone for attending, and to our speakers, Jonni and Marc. As a reminder, a link to the survey will pop up on your browser when you leave the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.